name is Vivian, and our proposition is that California should cancel the high-speed rail project approved by voters in 2008. Our first claim is that the cost of the high-speed rail would increase and escalate financial issues for both the state of California and its population. From what Kyle has stated, that regardless of budget cuts and Proposition 98, K-12 education funding won't go below 40%, and which is not true. The state doesn't need to always provide funding at the level required by a minimum guarantee. In fact, they can go below it. According to the Legislative Analyst Office, in 2004 and to 2005 and 2010 to 2011, the state applied a provision of Proposition 98, allowing for the suspension of the minimum guarantee upon a 2/3 vote of each House of Legislators. A second point is that California cannot afford the construction of the rail and will face a deficit up to $80 billion, which will cause harm to the state. With increasing loans and borrowing money from the state, federal, and local, it will increase the deficit. In the Los Angeles Times, Governor Jerry Brown's proposed budget says that the state would lend California's bullet train agency $29 million to keep the project moving ahead amid increased uncertainty about the availability of future funding for the massive project. Which brings me to the third point, that there is no proper funding for the high-speed rail. Extending on what Vincent said, the funding approach outlined in 2012 revised business plan is no more certain than what was proposed in previous plans. From the Legislative Analyst Office, for example, the plan in 2012 assumes nearly 62% of the total expected cost will be funded by the federal government. However, about $39 billion of this amount has not been secured from the federal government, given the federal government's current financial situation and the current focus in Washington on reducing federal spending. It is uncertain if any further funding for the high-speed rail program will become available. Our second claim is that the passage of Proposition 1A in 2008 provides direct funding for the construction of the rail. Our first point is that this bill was supposed to be introduced in 2004, but delayed to 2006, which then was moved to 2008 due to budget concerns. In the Legislative Analyst Office, Chapter 697 in the statutes of 2002 enacted the Safe, Reliable, High-Speed Passenger Train Bond Act for the 21st century. If the act, if approved by voters at the November 2004 election, would authorize the issuance of $9 billion in general obligation bonds for development of the initial stages of a high-speed rail network, an obligation that California did not want to concern itself with at the moment. Our second point is that the bill was approved in 2008, but the year 2008 marked the beginning of the California budget crisis. Even though the budget crisis has settled down, it has not been settled by a great amount. According to Ballotopedia, between the fiscal years 2013 to 2014, the total government spending in California decreased by only 2.9%. In the same article in 2014, California was ranked 9th in the nation for its state debt per capita. And also according to the PEW Charitable Trust as of May 2014, California received a credit rating of A, which is 7 out of 9, and 9 being the worst. So just because the budget crisis has seemed to balance, we don't need to to implement a train that might bring us back to it. And our third claim is that canceling the funding and construction of the high-speed rail would benefit and prevent financial issues in California. First point is funding that would be used, we could use the funding for more important issues such as health, education, and social. According to the Los Angeles Times, the proposed loans follows a similar 26 million advance last year from federal government revenues that prompted some lawmakers to voice concerns about the possibility that such lending would take money away from other high priority projects such as healthcare and education. Our second point is that California could ease the budget crisis since there would be no funding available for the rail. Compared to other large U.S. infrastructure projects, California is the most expensive. From the Daily Journal of Commerce, the Seattle Tunnel cost $3 billion. From the Washington Post, Dole's rail line cost $6 billion. And from the Chicago Tribune, O'Hare expansion cost $9 billion. And from the Legislative Analyst's Office, California high-speed rail costs a staggering $68 billion. We're spending $68 billion on a train when there are other practical and essential uses for this. And I want to bring back that our claims, or that the cost of the high-speed rail would create and escalate financial issues for both the state of California and its population. The passage of Proposition 1A in 2008 provides direct funding for the construction of the rail, and that canceling the funding and construction of the high-speed rail would benefit and prevent financial issues